welcome back to Raw AI Solutions, the podcast where we explore how business leaders are navigating the fast-moving world of AI and digital transformation. I'm Denise Powell, your host, and today we are joined by Bob Vail, CEO of Woodside Security Consultants. So, Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Bob, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Certainly. I have been a longtime IT and information security professional. I started out, as most people in my profession do, doing basic help desk and building computers and those kind of things. And over the years have done pretty much every job in IT. I finished that part of my career, strict IT, as the CIO for a regional bank in the San Francisco Bay Area. I had a tremendous mentor there who, what I'll call, took me to the dark side of information security. And I have been doing primarily information security focused jobs since. I've been virtual CISO now I have 3 customers currently where I'm doing that work for them. I have held those positions and senior director positions in lots of industries, primarily wealth management, lending, retail banking, insurance, et cetera. And then most recently, agile software, including a company called Pivotal that was an EMC invention. And my last agile company was a materials analytics platform developer. So that was quite interesting as well. Basically a virtual laboratory running in the internet. And so I've kind of had a very broad, very wide bunch of experiences in this. And I like to say I almost have figured out about 5% of what I actually need to know.
Love that. So that's actually quite different, going from all those roles to actually starting your own business. What made you take that leap?
Interesting. I started out consulting when I was doing IT. I started about 13 years ago. A number of friends knew what I did and told their friends that if they needed help, they should call me. I wasn't actually giving out my phone number. Other people were doing that for me. And so I had customers that I had one woman that came completely out of the blue. Phone rang, and I'd never met her or heard from her previously. And she had a problem with her computer that she described as, every time I opened the CD player, my computer quits. And I thought, well, okay, I'll take this one on because I have no idea what would cause that. So I went to her home, and when I got there, I asked her to show me, and it turned out that the hard drive in her system unit had a handle on it. And she thought to pull the handle that would open the CD player. Well, that was actually the drive in her computer. And they have a lock on them, but she hadn't locked it into the case. So sure enough, she got her computer going and she pulls the handle and it shut down. Well, yeah, okay. So I asked her, I said, do you know where the coffee cup holder is? And she said, oh, sure. And she pressed the button and opened the CD drawer. And I said, okay, so that's not a coffee cup holder. This is, so I got the key from her hard drive and locked it in place. And I said, now just lose this. You'll never need to take that out of there again. Mm-hmm. And that was, it kind of piqued my interest in kind of expanding what people were asking me, because I like problem solving, always have. When people are frustrated with their computers, it is more than just a device that they don't like. It becomes disruptive to them. And so I like helping people fix those problems. From there, it just kind of blossomed into all kinds of different stuff. Over the last, I'd say 10 years now, I was doing advisory kind of informally for friends that were starting companies. And, I'm in the Silicon Valley, so everybody starts a company at some point. And so I had this group of folks that I respected and admired. And they said, well, we don't have any cash for you, but we'll give you stock if you'll come in and help us. And so I started helping them. And I helped them get on their feet and help them with their technology and their products and help them hire professionals and advisory stuff. And then I kind of moved on and add some other companies. interestingly enough, it was 9 years after I kind of helped them to get started. I got a check in the mail from a company that I hadn't done work for. And I'm trying to figure out what this check is for.
Yeah.
And I got to the bottom of the third page, and it was for the acquisition of the company that I'd helped get started. And so, because I had stock in this company from helping them get started, I got paid by the company that acquired them. That was kind of interesting. I thought, well, okay, surprise money out of the mail. That's a good thing. And so I have, over the years, I've done 16 companies now. Some of them big, some very small. Most of the ones that I have helped have made it. 11 out of the 16 have either been acquired or gone IPO. The vast majority are security companies that have products like CASB and a bunch of the other kind of infrastructure for information security. And so I have a pretty long list of really successful friends. Some of the companies you'd recognize. The original one that kind of got me into that space was Adalum. They created the CASB that Microsoft purchased, and that's what Defender is now, the Cloud Defender. And then those guys were very successful following that because everybody understood what they had done to help Microsoft. And when their requirement to work for Microsoft ended, they had people approach them and say, "We'd like to give you money." And so they did very well. And they were the guys that started Wiz. And Wiz is, well, they're part of Google now because they've been acquired as well. But that whole string includes people that were at Adalum and started other companies. And so when I go to Black Hat, which is going on now, and I'm not there this year, I run into people that I know from these companies, and they're speaking on stage, and they come off, they go, "Hey, Bob." So I love what I do. I get to be at the bleeding edge. I get to see the development and the ideas come from people, and the people that I have helped over the years, I got to know them in a situation where I was helping someone else. And so they come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to do this thing. Can you help us? And we'd really like to talk to you about what do you think?" and those kind of things. So I love doing that. And so that's what my business has kind of morphed into. I help directly, but I'm kind of funny this way. I give away a lot of advice for free. For example, I have a friend that I've known for many years, and she is an avid pickleball player. And so she started I'm going to call it a dating app, but that's not actually correct. It's an app that allows people who like pickleball to arrange a match and then make friendships, or they can, use it more like a dating app if they really want to. And so she just got off the ground, and it's a fascinating application. And she's a single mom and has been working her tail off to get it done. So, I've helped her with getting her website done properly and her security taken care of and her PCI compliance so she can take credit card payments and these kind of things. And, maybe someday she'll be a billionaire and invite me to dinner. But other than that, I'm not getting paid for that.
Love it. I was going to say, what? Just on the side, what on earth is pickleball?
Oh, okay. So it's very much like tennis, but it is a much smaller court. And the ball is a wiffle ball, so a plastic ball with a bunch of holes drilled in it. So it isn't a high-speed, high velocity game. The paddle is hard, kind of like a ping pong paddle, and most of the matches, frankly, are doubles. And so it's kind of it's a social way to play smaller tennis.
Great.
It's in the U.S. in particular, it's really blown up. A number of the public parks that have tennis courts have drawn new lines on the tennis courts so you can play pickleball on the same court.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to be cutting through the noise around shiny tools and quick wins and exploring the real future-ready IT strategies and what that actually looks like. So I'm going to ask you, Bob, getting back to the topic at hand today, have you seen any major shifts in the industry over the last year?
Oh my goodness. I will say that I have, let me put it this way. I have a number of solutions that I think are critically important. to the safety of the things that we're doing. And one of those is preparing for quantum and what that means for encryption technologies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bad day coming for a whole lot of people, and they really should be paying attention to this and making plans at the very least to fix this. However, a large number of the people that I've talked to about looking at this problem and discussing it with me and looking at some of the solutions have said management wants something with AI. And
Mm-hmm.
that's about as far as they go with a description of what they're actually looking for. But if what you want to talk about doesn't have either AI in the name or prominently displayed in the descriptions of the product, they're not having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mandate from their senior management is to, we need to be in AI and we need to catch up with AI and we need AI in our business. Interestingly enough, I say, so what do they want to do with AI? And most of the answers are they have no idea. They want me to figure that out for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't believe in my entire career I have seen distraction of this level, right? There have always been goals and problems to solve. And way back in the day before the firewall got protected, people really worried a lot about getting the right firewall. We still need firewalls, but the technology is so good now that the attack surface for firewalls has all but disappeared. People just aren't kicking down the firewall. They're asking the user for their password. So the world has changed a little bit there. But the recent changes for me around AI in particular is that it has become a club of cool. And by that I mean, if you don't have AI and you feel left out of the discussion, or all of your friends are talking about all their cool things they're doing with AI, and you have nothing to say except hold your damn tongue. So I think that's the it's kind of comedy the way I'm telling it, but it is truth as well. Is that there is a lot of just distraction around technology that has been given a name that in many cases absolutely makes no sense.
I That's something I'm noticing about a lot of people that are covering these podcasts, and from a lot of my clients as well. People want results quickly, and they just say, just use AI. It's the latest thing. It's the new silver bullet for everything. It's going to solve all things. But you've got to use it responsibly. You've got to know why you're using it. You've got to know what you want to actually do with it.
It
Um,
also depends deeply on what you're training your AI to do.
yes.
You can't get on Chat GPT through Google and ask it for problems it's never been trained to understand. It will give you an answer, but the answer may have absolutely nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish. And this
Mhm.
is, in my view, this is the biggest problem with AI. I think if you could program an AI the way that the Chinese DeepSeek did when they first released it, if you asked it questions it didn't want to answer, it would say that's beyond the scope of my purview, and it wouldn't lie to you. It wouldn't hallucinate and give you an answer. And I think that level of transparency is mostly missing from
Mm.
artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you talk to people who are deep in the learning curve and understand what it means, they will tell you if you ask some AI that is not trained in what you're doing a question 3 or 4 times, you will get significantly different answers. And so at that point, um, do you trust what any of those answers are? If you
Mm.
have no specific knowledge in the field and couldn't tell the difference, well, then what use are those answers to you? And
Yeah.
I think that's important to us is that, yes, it can ask and answer questions at the speed of compute. Well, if you have a 3.6 gigahertz processor, divide that by 9, and you get how many questions can be answered in a second. And it comes with 8 zeros. And that's a large, large number of questions. So what appears to be knowledge isn't. It is I like to refer to it as euphemism, but it just makes my point. If you know the game 20 questions and you start
Mm.
with is it animal, Yes or no. Is it mineral? Yes or no, etc. And you ask these 20 questions, eventually you will derive an answer to whatever it is you're searching for. And this is at the end of the day, this is what binary logic is. It is a bunch of yes or I don't know questions. And so as long as it can answer yes, it will get to the next thing. But if the I don't know means I didn't understand what you're asking, you'll get a loop anyway. And so, all right, the fact that it can do this literally hundreds of millions of times in a second means that it can play 20 questions faster than you can. But at the end of the day, it's not thinking. It is deriving things from a binary logic. And to be fair, if humans had binary logic only, we'd still be living in caves. We'd have some nice caves, but we'd be living in caves because we wouldn't intuit. We wouldn't have insight. We wouldn't gain things from experience. What we give AI credit for in machine learning is still things that it has been told. And that may be for a number of sources. It's good at sourcing things. But at the end of the day, if you tell a person that 2 plus 2 is 7, and you tell it to them from the beginning of their education, they're going to have a really hard time until somebody goes, no, look, 2, 2, 4. Okay? Then they'll get it. But if you tell an AI from the beginning of its training that 2 plus 2 is 7, it believes you the first time you tell it. And so the care and the diligence that we have to take around AI, in my opinion, has been, in some cases, pushed aside for expediency so that we can have those revolutionary answers right now. And okay, I understand it. Business moves as fast as we can go, and depending on what the questions and the areas are, that's important. I'll give you one more example. When I was working in materials analytics, the virtual laboratory depended upon the rules of physics to work properly, right? So if you're going to add more magnesium to your aluminum to make it stiffer, so instead of aluminum foil, which you can crush in your hand, you want a fender for your car made out of aluminum. You have to understand the properties of those materials, or the AI does at least. If it isn't taught things like water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, how would it know? It can't. It doesn't have any real world experience burning itself on the teapot like the rest of the companies. But it trusts everything it's been told, and if what it's been told is inaccurate or incorrect, it can't tell the difference. It will give you numbers and responses and analytics on materials, and you'll invent the coolest thing that never worked. Okay. And so I'm a skeptic. I completely admit it. But the truth is if you pay attention to the thousands of people that are humans training AI, and many of them in third world countries, because it's really cheap to pay those people to do it, the quality of the training becomes suspect in my mind. And once you trust your AI, when do you start checking? Because if you trust it, you just accept the answers that you get.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to verify. That is the key to all of us. Verify.
Absolutely.
And it's quite scary because now we're getting a generation growing up with AI, and they don't have any real world experience to be able to look at the answer and actually go, that doesn't quite feel right. And they'll just take that exactly as gospel truth and present that forward as a fact.
Well, and we get people who pretend to be experts, and this is even more scary, right? Because okay, so I'm an old man, and I was a professional before we had smartphones, and so once we had the smartphone, every person who has one has the ability to look up on the fly, like, how do I get home at night? And okay, they can do that. Some people are challenged enough that they need Google to tell them how to get home at night. But they look like they know because they have a smartphone. And so this technology loop becomes, I don't need to learn because I have a device that will tell me.
Yes.
And I think really this is another one of those things about AI. I was reading an article about this the other day, that we're expecting humans to get dumber
Yes.
because we're not forcing them to think about things. Okay. That's sad, but like I said, I'm an old man. Everybody goes, "Yeah, you have Google, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I use it. But um, I had a grandfather who was an educator, and he told me, "We go to school to learn how to learn. That's the skill that you need to get above all else, because
Mm.
things will change, and you'll have new things to learn every day. And as long as you keep learning, your brain will keep you alive quite some time, uh, because you're learning and you're growing and you're more equipped." He lived to be 96 years old, so he had something right there.
I was going to say, you're not old if you're quoting Google. If you're quoting encyclopedias, then we can talk. But you've mentioned that most executives don't really understand the true risks of implementing AI, especially at pace. And what do you think the biggest blind spots leaders tend to have when it comes to AI and security?
Being a security person, I love. There's a very common phrase that's called "trust but verify." Um,
Mm.
People, in particular, when I was working at large software company, uh, many of the software engineers would complain that they didn't have admin rights to every system they ever touched. And so I would have many of these conversations, and their statement was, "You should trust me." And I always told them the same thing, which is, I'm not in the trust business. If we do trust but verify, I just skip trust. I'm going right to verify every single time. So I don't trust the people because that's not my job. My job is not to trust them and to make sure that they're who they say they are and they do the things that they're supposed to
Mm.
do. And so that's the fundamental position that security takes. But more importantly, for the general sense, is that you can't trust that people know what they say they know and do what they say that they're going to do. And so, this idea that we need to be in a hurry to implement AI in every possible way, frankly, in many cases, so we can dispense with the humans and increase the profits for our companies. I don't believe it's healthy for anybody. I think that when the bad day happens and you discover that your AI has been hallucinating for the last 4 months, all of the work that it's produced over that time is suspect. Does it make sense to go back and undo it? Well, if you want to keep going, you have to kind of go back in time and find out where it started telling you stupid things and start over from that point. That's the
Mm.
only hope that you have, because a thing that builds on a thing and builds on itself, once it's wrong from thereafter.
Mm.
Everything is based upon something that it's
Mm.
learned from a person or been told by another AI. And here's where I see the greatest risk for everyone is that AI will start asking AI and not humans, and not get that verification from the real world, but rather we'll all be taking the same drug and hallucinating in the same way. Uh,
Mm.
that's a rather dire view of the world, but again, I'm in security, so that's what I have to pay for, to prepare for.
I've actually seen it start to happen where it looks like when you actually are working in AI, it does start to ask another AI and it responds. And you think, wow, that is quite scary, actually.
Well, and
It's
and
so
again,
much.
it's the I read, oh, maybe it's been 2 months now, that the vast majority of publicly accessible data has been consumed.
Wow.
Okay, that's amazing. But again, as technology has moved forward, and certainly in my lifetime, and even from when I was fairly old already, there at one point there was not enough storage to save the information that was being gathered. And so my favorite example is the national security services uh, were trying to figure out how to listen into phone calls since the early days of the telephone. And when you had a tip and ring system, well, you plugged in another wire and you could hear everything that was going on. But recording in those days was next to impossible, because you either had a wire or a piece of vinyl, and you weren't going to be able to capture all of the phone calls in any exchange. You just weren't able to do that. In the digital world, especially with the explosion of available storage, they're recording everything because they can. It isn't about they need to. And in fact, they've gotten away from human beings listening. They have a computer system that listens and flags on a word. So if I said, that meal was the bomb, then somebody's going to go, what did he, it said bomb. What did he, okay, never mind. Right, but that is the logic that we're using, that we can do, we can store everything now. Okay.
Yeah.
How much of it is truth? This is the part that I keep coming back to. If we share nonsense, does that help us? Is that healthy? I'm not sure. It may lead to some other creative ideas eventually, but it'll be the humans with the creative ideas.
Mm. Well, that actually leads into my other question for you was, you made a powerful point that insight is still a human capability and not an AI one. So in your view, where should we draw the line between automation and decision making?
Oh, this is a really good question. My favorite example for this shall make pretty good sense. In the world of security, event, and information management, SIM, for the longest time, we have been gathering logs. Here's what happened. By the bucketful, by gigs and gigs and gigs from a single company all day, every day, and you end up with this enormous bucket of I have no idea what's in there. And so human beings, at their first attempts at this, were doing what I'd like to call the Ouija board approach, which is they tried to imagine what could go bad, and they wrote a rule to make the decision that you're talking about. So if you see a log that says this, then that means the following, and you should ring a bell, blink a light, send an email, wake somebody up in the middle of the night. And so this was the basic idea of log analysis. As we've progressed forward through these technologies, and I say we as if we're all doing it, there are some leaders in the space that are using behavioral analytics. And I don't mean human, I mean system behavior as an analytic to say, if a user attempts to log on 5 times in a row and then fails, and the 6th time they succeed, traditional SIM logic was that's an indication of compromise because somebody's hacking and they finally guess the password, and yes, it's password with $signs instead of S's. Okay. The truth is, it's more likely to be an indication of caps lock rather than somebody hacking. And so that the logic of implementing a rule based on assumption has been faulty all along. Now that we're letting AI say, I saw a log, I don't know exactly what that means, but it looks like this other thing. So I'm going to apply logic from another thing I've been told and take that action. Okay, I want to say things like nice try, but you don't get a cigar for that one because we have, in fact, seen AIs look at things like the database was updated and a copy made and pushed to a new storage location, and there was no authentication because it was done by a root account or something that left a hole in the logic for the AI. And the assumption that the AI made was, well, that's got to be poisoned, so I'm deleting that database. And it did. And oops, turns out that was an important database and kind of took a whole set of things offline because of the decision made by an AI. Now, can we blame AI? Well, we're in that space where if we trust AI, well, sure, we can blame AI. But come on, it's binary logic. We didn't program it properly, or we accepted that the machine learning it was doing for itself was somehow infallible. And that's just wrong. And so when your AI decides to blank your critical database, yeah, that's a bad day and could be a continuing bad day. the more that the actual event and the news of the event is publicly released, um, there is so much of this capability that has promise, but I just think it needs tempering. That's probably the right way to say it.
Yeah, completely. And also, there's a risk of laziness or complacency where people hand off critical work to AI. But what do you see as the long-term consequences of that mindset in organizations?
Oh. So I think that let me address the first thing that you said, because I think this is the source of most of the problem. And that is, if we, I have a friend who's a brilliant guy and is
Mhm.
overwhelmed. And so he was handed a project to write fairly complex software in a hurry. And
Mm.
he's very, very smart, and he has had a long and distinguished career. But he is not the 25-year-old hacker that he may have been managing for the last 15 or 20 years. And so he started experimenting pretty early on with AI to do the simple stuff.
Mm. Mm.
And okay, he's been writing code with it, and the first several runs looked to be successful. They produced code that could be compiled. Okay, cool. And it crashed and burned. Didn't do what it was supposed to in any reasonable way at all. Just basically didn't. But the AI followed the instructions it was given.
Mhm.
I need you to write me an app that does the following, blah, 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 blah. And if the AI is trained and you give it enough information to follow your directions, it's really good at looking up things very, very quickly. And so if you say, when was the War of 1812? Most people will kind of smile at that. Go, are you kidding? The AI will be very happy to tell you precisely. Well, it began on this date in the year of 1812, which is why it's called that. Yeah, okay. It's trying to figure out what you want is not
Mm.
something it even attempts. It will just do what it's told. And if you
Mm.
don't tell it correctly, don't be surprised if it doesn't give you what you want.
Yeah.
One of the things I used to tell people early on in my IT career when I was helping people, I ran a help desk. I had a bunch of people that worked for me, and we would have these discussions at the beginning of every day about what did we learn and what are the things that we really need to pay attention to.
Mhm.
And one of the phrases that we all got used to using, not necessarily to the end user, but in a way, was, I can help you with what you ask me to do, but I can't help you with what you want. You have to tell me what you want, and then I can help you. But if you come to me and you say, I need more RAM in my computer, my tech could get a stick and run up to your box and implant the thing, and good luck, now you got more RAM. But the technicians were trained to say, okay, I'm sure we have some RAM around here and we can help you. If that's going to solve your problem, let's figure out what it is the problem you're having.
Mm.
And in the early days of the internet, a lot of people would say, I need more RAM, and would install memory in their computer. And the answer to why was because the internet is slow. Well, okay, unless you're running the internet locally from your computer, RAM isn't going to help you. And so I think this is a good kind of illustration of what's
Mm.
happening again, which is people tell it, I want you to do the following, but may not be very good at saying, I want this, and this is how I'm asking you, so that what I want is matching what I'm asking for.
Mm. Mm.
And AI, again, just can't, you may ask your AI as you train it, make sure you ask people these following questions when they say these things. And it will do that if you train it. If you don't train it to do that, it's not going to do that. You have to train it to do those things.
Mm. Mm.
And so I think that's the thing that is probably all of the hidden gems that are coming are based on this basic idea that we've asked AI to do a lot of things, and then we take the results of those things and we call them knowledge. and we base more training on those things to train our AIs to do something we were sure they were successful at, but I'm not sure. And so this is where you get these cascading errors, right? Because, I'll give you one example for this. I like this story because it affected me when I was in 10th grade. I had a teacher talk about proving things with the English language in particular, and you have to be careful. And so she used the example, if you say breadcrumbs are better than nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing's better than a good steak, logically, breadcrumbs are better than a good steak. Well, humans are going to go, well, so, okay, you used a euphemism instead of, right? But is the AI going to know that?
Yeah. I love that. That's a great thing. So tell me, Bob, from your perspective, as a security consultant and former CIO, what would a more responsible and realistic AI rollout look like for like a mid-sized business in today's society? If anything at all.
So there's a number of old sayings about why accidents happen, and most of them have to do with people rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in our haste to implement systems that we don't fully understand and haven't learned the hard lessons about training AI in particular, that we're just going to keep stumbling. And if you expect to stumble and fall down, okay, well, you're going to buy a bunch of Band-Aids because you're going to fall down. And then you'll have a fix for what happens when you fall down. If you don't prepare for stumbling and falling, then your rush to AI is going to be, how many times did I fall down before I got up enough times to solve the problem I was actually getting to? Well, again, a euphemism meaning that when AI screws up, you don't need a Band-Aid. Well, you might need a fresh resume, but it just depends on how badly that goes. I think in what I tell my clients about AI is be sure you understand the problem and the solution. And that when you start out, you check to understand if your AI has the background necessary to make decisions that you can trust. If not, spend the time training it on things that it absolutely has to know and tell it when this, at 212 degrees, the water is going to boil and you'll see bubbles and steam. Okay. So if you have a wrinkled shirt, you can hang a hanger over your spaghetti while you're cooking it. And you'll get two benefits, right? You'll have pasta that's cooked in a shirt with no wrinkles. The AI isn't going to have any idea what that means, but it will know that if you have a wrinkled shirt and you're cooking spaghetti, you could probably get the wrinkles out. It may not even understand what that means in any case, but because it's something you told it, it can refer, and because it's been told. And so with business, the trick is that if you expect it to understand your business, you specifically have to teach it your business.
No, I like that. That's so true. So, Bob, looking forward as we zoom out a little bit at Woodside Security, where would you like to take your business over the next 6 to 12 months?
Let me start with something that brings a smile to my face and is almost true, and that is I want to retire at some point. I see for my current clients is to help them to reach the next milestone. If you think of it as a bunch of stair steps, there are two paths in every company. One is that you go all the way to some kind of IPO and you go public, and everybody gets to ring the bell in New York City. Okay. Or you build a better mousetrap, and somebody who's in the business that you're in, a large company who does mergers and acquisitions, will come along and say, here's $20 million. Can I have your company? And you go, okay. So, right. I think that helping companies decide when they're ready what the path they need to take, because they're different. If you're working toward an acquisition, then you want to do things like align what you do with a company that does something where they will find what you do an attractive add-on and will be interested in purchasing. If you're competing with the company and you go to them and say, gee whiz, we think we're better than you, so you should acquire us, you may actually get shoved out the door because that's not an approach that's going to be conducted to selling your business. If you're going to go IPO, it's a longer road, and you know from the very beginning you have to convince somebody, okay, we've made a product and we've convinced 10 people to buy it, and we're seeing the sales increase, so we have traction, and we have product, and we think we're filling a niche. And the venture guys are going to go, oh, okay, we're going to give you 200 grand. Let's see what you do with that. And then you do something and they give you more, and you have multiple rounds, and off you go. And, someday you may go IPO. Depends a lot on what you do. Companies that race to an IPO and are successful, well, they had a really good idea and they executed exceptionally well. But not everyone can do that. And so for my customers, what I want to help them do, as I'm kind of reaching my golden years, is to define their path earlier in their development. Find that okay, so do we want to be a company that my grandchildren are running? Do we want to be a company that we sold in year 5 or year 10 or year 15 and everybody went to play golf the rest of their life? That decision making for what I can advise people to do will help them drive their budgeting and expenditures in technology and other things that they need to do. Overall, right now, I have one really strong goal because I recognize the threat, and that is quantum-based computing is going to be a big problem for the vast majority of companies on this planet.
Now, explain to people what that is.
Sure. This is basically a problem as it relates to encryption of files. The things that we have been using all along are mathematical equations. Essentially, if I'll go to the base level, and I'll go quickly. Encryption is clear text plus or multiplied by a digital number that represents an entropy, the beginning of your equation. So clear text plus this number equals text that represents cipher text or encrypted. And so if my dog has fleas is written on a piece of paper and you encrypt it, it will come out as gobbledygook. It won't even look like words. It's encrypted. And so the reverse process is to take, just like in any algebraic equation, you take what's on this side of the equal sign and you say minus the thing that you did to clear text, and ta-da, there is clear text again. Okay. The second piece, the A plus B, the B in this equation, has been a set of things that were really clever. And I cast no aspersions on the people that came up with this. Very, very smart. But they're predictable. In an enormous sense, it takes crazy compute to do the figuring about what that number is, and so that you can undo the encryption because you can derive the keys. The importance of quantum is that it does massive parallel compute at super high speed. So you can say, this is a 2048 key, 2048 binary characters to this key, right? And you take this and you can say, what are all the possibilities? Well, that's billions, right? Because the order of magnitude that you have when you're doing encryption is enormous. And your laptop certainly isn't going to do that. Quantum will be able to break those keys very quickly. Now, we were told, and I say that most of us that have been trained in this stuff have been told that, if you have an RSA 2048, it's 1,000 years for even a what we used to call supercomputers like Cray to break that, because the permutations are enormous and lengthy. For quantum, this is minutes, not years, not months, not even weeks. It's minutes because of the capability of the compute.
Mm.
So what it means now is that everyone who has their stuff encrypted with these unbreakable keys, they're in real deep trouble. And for two reasons. One is when quantum arrives, they'd better have replaced those keys with what is called PQE, post-quantum encryption, something that, because of the construction of the equation, quantum is not going to be able to do it quickly. On the other hand, there's all that data that is currently encrypted in unbreakable form that we have been, I'm not going to say unconcerned, but certainly lax in protecting because it can't be broken. So people come in and they steal our data, but so what? They can't open it. Well, when quantum comes along, they can go back to every one of those things that they've taken and break it wide open and get clear text. So if we're talking about personal information, bank accounts, credit card numbers, everything that has been encrypted can now, when quantum is available, easily be broken, and all of that can become clear text. So we refer to this process as the steal and store, because they take the data and they park it away, and because someday we'll be able to break that. Well, someday, according to NIST, the U.S. Geniuses for the U.S. government, they said 2035. Wait, 2032. Okay, 2030. And wait for it, it's coming. Oh, yesterday, because that's going to happen. And when it happens, now all of the data, not just the stolen and stored, but all of the current data that is encrypted with these keys is wide open. And there's nothing you can do to stop it except move to a post-quantum encryption strategy. Well, 5 years in budget time. Oh yeah, I know. I got a budget for this year and next year, but 5 years, I'm not ready to spend money on that right now. Okay,
Yeah.
I've been there, know what that means. But in getting a new encryption technology in place universally, 5 years is a blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so who should be concerned? Well, who shouldn't? Banks, credit unions, wealth management companies, Federal Reserve, Bank of Scotland, right? All of the financials. Well, what else? So if I
What about digital currency?
digital currency, great, good example. What if you can derive the key from where it's stored encrypted? Well, then you can break into every wallet there is. It's all the same problem. So in my view, what if I can accomplish something in the next 5 years, what I'd really like to do is help people to address and solve this problem. Now, there are several companies that have interesting solutions. There's one, I'd love to give them a pitch, but it's your podcast, so I'm going to say they're based in the U.S., but they have an office in Germany, and they really have a good solution.
Well, you may as well put it out there.
Okay, so the name of the company is Patero, Patero. They have 3 really important tools. The first one is a search, basically, that allows you to identify the files that are encrypted and what they're encrypted with. And so you can discover the scope of your problem and understand what it means to solve it. Critically important to start with that. You have to understand the scope of what you're doing. Secondly, they have the ability to put PQE encryption over the top of what you currently have, which means you're not going to decrypt your files. That would be, well, that's the right word, stupid. That would be stupid. Don't do that. But if you keep the key from RSA and the key from the PQE and use both keys at the same time, you can unlock your files, unlocking both of the encryption systems. So this gives you a long time to remove the outdated keys because you're already protected what's been written over the top.
Mhm.
So that critically important as well. It's like, okay, I can solve the problem, but I'm never going to decrypt my keys until I've got all the PQE in place. And then I can discover which ones are using the previous encryption using the same search tool that I found the stuff in the first place. And then decrypt those files, meaning remove those keys. Brilliant. The third part, which is, there are a lot of folks that not really clear on what it means to encrypt in transit. I'll give you that really quick. Transport layer security, or TLS, is the process of routers, the external interface of a router from a location, talking to the external interface of a router where they intend to send files.
Mhm.
And those two devices do what we call a handshake and share a key. So they encrypt the traffic between those two devices as the traffic goes across the internet. Awesome. Really good. The current version is 1.3, and the solution that Piptero has a basic insert of the quantum resistant key into this process. So as long as your routers can communicate that set of keys, you can upgrade the in-process encryption as well. Now,
Mhm.
encryption in transit is not perfect because from the router it touches to everything in the inside of your network is now clear text too. Okay. If your users are giving up their passwords and the bad guys are on the inside, they're not going to try to decrypt that thing in the internet. They're going to wait until it's clear text on the inside of your network and get it from there. And so the whole idea is at some point we're all going to have to get used to the idea that we have to encrypt our internal traffic too. And of course, you would want to do that with the PQE. And okay, so that's my kind of. I'll climb off my soapbox now. I think this is really the most important problem that I can see on the horizon. Is we're going to have that bad day, and what's a great example? Oh, here, there's commercials on American television for this now.
Sorry, Bob, before you carry on, we're going to have to wrap up shortly.
Okay, I think this is my last wander into the wilderness. There are commercials on the U.S. television now talking about how your property, the title to your home, can be stolen because people will, yes. So people will get your personal information. Everything that they need is in the mortgage application you filled out. Your name, your social security number, your address, your credit card numbers, your job, everything that can identify you and is tied to your finances. By stealing this information, literally they can file a quit claim. It's a very simple document that gives your property to someone else. And they forge your signature because they have a copy of it, and they have all the right numbers because they have a copy of it, and they file that document, and they now own your home. Wow.
That's scary.
Right. Yes. And so again, the coming failure of encryption technology to protect this information, the fallout from this is going to be just tremendously out of control. There really isn't the property title police. Right? There's nobody focused on this. I mean, it's a fraud, so law enforcement that does that will also look at this. But at the end of the day, this problem has no solution except to encrypt things properly and keep it from happening. And to me, that's the important thing, is to make sure that people's data is encrypted and protected.
Well, that is very scary, Bob. And on that wonderful note, we're going to have to wrap up here, folks. But Bob, it's been absolutely wonderful and such a pleasure having you on this call. For those of you who'd like to know more about Woodside Security Consultants or would like to get hold of Bob, you'll find their contact details below in the description. Bob, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure, Denise. Have a great day.